It arrived right on schedule, a white DAF truck with Polish plates. Inside the trailer, crates of garlic, ginger, and peppers. The documents, immaculate, scanned and stamped. The cargo originated from a company in Rotterdam and was heading to a logistics center in northwest England. Nothing out of the ordinary. The driver showed no nerves. He handed over the paperwork, mentioned that the goods were perishable, and asked not to be delayed. But the National Crime Agency officers weren't inspecting for vegetables. They already knew what was buried beneath the produce. Inside each crate, neatly concealed among the spices, were compressed bricks of cocaine and heroin, layered with precision, wire-sealed, industrially packed. This wasn't a random find. This was a system, and this shipment, just one of over 240 similar runs through the UK. Only this time, the NCA was ready. The investigation had been building quietly for years. The NCA had flagged dozens of suspicious shipments coming through British ports, legitimate paperwork, routine routes. But one thing was clear. Someone was using Europe's food supply chain to funnel in Class A drugs at industrial scale. Each load followed the same playbook. Companies registered to empty addresses, warehouses that opened and closed every few months, drivers who delivered and vanished, returns to the continent with empty trailers and no trace. Everything looked legal, until you opened the crates. When officers cut open this particular truck, they found what they'd long suspected: commercial-grade concealment. Each pallet was stacked with surgical accuracy, garlic and spices on top, and hundreds of kilos of Class A drugs layered below. That's when the NCA made the call. Launch full-scale action. The operation had a name: Venetic. This truck was no accident. Surveillance had tracked it for weeks. The warehouse it was heading to had been under observation for months. Now, with physical evidence in hand, the agency was ready to move. This wasn't street dealing. This was a global trafficking architecture, and it was about to be torn down from the inside. At first glance, Paul Green didn't look like someone who oversaw billions of pounds in narcotics shipments. A logistics man from Manchester, mid-40s, quiet, unremarkable. No flashy spending, no Instagram photos from Dubai, no luxury cars. But to those in the encrypted network, he was known simply as the big fella. He wasn't a dealer, he was a builder of systems, routes, and cover. Behind Green stood a structure: shell companies, warehouses, front businesses. Firms that appeared real, but existed only on paper. His job wasn't to move drugs. It was to make sure everything else looked legitimate. The shipments started in the Netherlands, Rotterdam, The Hague. Cargo was loaded at distribution centers disguised as food exporters. Boxes of garlic, onions, ginger, packed with layers of heroin and cocaine hidden beneath sealed produce. Sometimes it was peppers, sometimes frozen roots, but the routine was always the same. More than 30 companies were tied to the operation. Each had a fake director, a vague business address, a temporary lease. Some were registered to residential flats, others to industrial units with no signage. But all had proper export documentation: CMR paperwork, trade invoices, the kind of files no customs agent questions twice. The trucks crossed into the UK via Calais, Hook of Holland, or on ferries to Felixstowe and Harwich. Once inside Britain, the shipments were met by local contacts: warehouse operators, freelance couriers, and short-term contractors. The key? Constant movement. New drop sites every 8-12 weeks. Warehouses opened and shut down on rotation. By the time someone got suspicious, the group had moved on. From there, the product was broken down. Large portions were sold wholesale to regional distributors. Other batches were stored, cold, clean, and out of sight. The rest was passed to street networks through mid-level brokers. Every inch of it coordinated, every address planned. Green ran it all from behind a screen. In encrypted messages, he spoke in weights and codes, never names. 12K to S, 3 by 10 AM. Leads later than G23. Paperwork checked. He had lieutenants, one who handled Eastern European transit, another who washed money through crypto. There was even a fake food distributor whose import license hid 20 kilograms per shipment under every legitimate ton of produce. Green never touched product, but he touched every decision. He was the voice, the map, the system itself. What he didn't know was that EncroChat had already been cracked, and every word he typed was now being read in real time. Every shipment cleared was another nail in his case. This wasn't a gang. There were no gold chains, no street deals, no turf wars. It was a corporation, clean on paper, deadly in practice. The organization that Paul Green built operated like a multinational freight company. But instead of contracts and invoices, it moved hundreds of tons of cocaine and heroin. Instead of pallets of consumer goods, it shipped hidden drugs beneath produce. Instead of an accounting team, a chain of encrypted messages and burner phones. From 2016 to 2020, the group moved at least 240 shipments, almost all of them declared as food: fruits, vegetables, spices, frozen roots. But inside, hidden compartments, double-walled crates, false bottoms. The network had layers. Level 1, transport. Polish and Dutch drivers hired through shell contractors. Some knew what they were moving, others didn't. Every load marked perishable good to discourage inspections. GPS routes were pre-programmed, including stop points and drop zones. Level 2, UK intake. On British soil, the trucks were met at industrial estates in Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds. Many sites were short-term rentals, secured under fake names and paid in cash. Every few months, the location changed. No alarms, no security, just a logo, a clipboard, and a forklift. Level 3, redistribution. Shipments were broken down, sorted, and resold. One batch to a regional buyer, one to cold storage. The rest filtered into the street supply chain. Level 4, cover operations. Front companies handled the paperwork. One was listed as an Asian goods importer, another as a logistics broker. A third, surprisingly, had a license to distribute food supplements. Each had a website, tax ID, and active bank accounts. Level 5, command and encryption. The entire machine was run through EncroChat. Every player had a handle. No real names, just aliases like Big Fella, Green, No Salt, a drop point supervisor, Double Onion, packaging expert, Stalk 9, trusted driver. Chats read like spreadsheets, 2K plus 8L, through Romford 2340, leads after, G7 delivery, paperwork morning. 18 core members ran the structure, each one insulated. None knew the full picture, and that's why it worked. Every cog turned quietly, every warehouse looked normal, every invoice scanned clean. But EncroChat had been compromised, and now every "we're good," every loaded, every drop confirmed was building a case, message by message. They thought they were untraceable. They thought the system was perfect. But in the end, the thing they trusted most, their encryption, became their undoing. They believed EncroChat was untouchable, a ghost network, safe for business, safe for secrets, a digital vault where they could talk openly about heroin, shipping routes, fake documents, payment splits, without ever looking over their shoulder. But in 2020, everything changed. French law enforcement, working quietly with zero publicity, had hacked the network. Not just access to past messages, but live data, text by text, handle by handle. And among the thousands of criminal exchanges, a particular chain stood out. A series of messages discussing multi-ton shipments, food cover containers, and someone referred to only as the big fella. That intel was handed to the UK's National Crime Agency, and they knew instantly this wasn't street level. This was the largest drug trafficking system ever mapped inside Britain. So they launched a new mission, Operation Venetic. This wasn't surveillance anymore. It was an operation, full scale, all in. Hundreds of officers, digital analysts, specialists in logistics, encryption, and asset tracing. A team built to take down an empire. But they didn't move right away. They watched. In real time, they read how drivers arranged trips, how GPS reflectors were purchased, how fake invoices were generated, how one message read, "Cover with extra onion layer, stronger smell, dogs stay off." Another, "No go through Gravesend, search is too tight." Everything was logged. Every "on the way," every green light, a future line of evidence. The NCA played it slow. As long as the network kept operating, they mapped the entire arc. Rotterdam, UK docks, inner city depots, repack hubs, street outlets. One user wrote, "If this batch clears, we hit 8 loads in May." That's when Venetic kicked into phase 2. 12 addresses were placed under surveillance. Some trucks were now shadowed. Drop sites were tagged. Officers installed hidden cameras in warehouses. In one recording, 2 men discussed timelines. Green says, "If this week's clean, 2 more go next, already packed." It's all in garlic. The NCA knew. This was the moment. The next shipment wasn't just product, it was the trigger. And the network, so carefully built, was about to walk itself straight into the trap. Operation Venetic was ready, not to intercept just one load, but to dismantle the entire shadow economy that had been operating under the cover of legitimate logistics. They didn't look like criminals. No masks, no guns, no turf. Just men unloading pallets, driving vans, and signing invoices. But what they handled wasn't logistics. It was organized crime. One warehouse in Salford, tucked beside an abandoned factory, had a banner: "Global Imports and Food Supplies Limited." Logo of garlic and ginger. Inside, empty shelves, no staff, and a strong odor of spice. That's where one track shipment ended. The man receiving it lived nearby. On paper, he was the company's director. In reality, he collected unemployment and rented 2 units using fake documents. He never asked questions. He was paid to receive. Another was a 28-year-old freelance driver. Over 12 months, he made 37 round trips to the Netherlands. GPS logs matched known smuggling routes. He didn't work for a transport company, but every week he drove a rented van to an anonymous site, dropped off a sealed crate, and left with 800 pounds. These were the foot soldiers, the hands. Green chose people carefully. No one saw the full picture. Each knew just enough. Everyone was replaceable. New drivers every 6 months. Warehouses rented for 90 days, then abandoned. Contacts limited to encrypted apps and burner phones. One arrest was a 24-year-old money runner. His job? Withdraw 2,000 pounds to 3,000 pounds at a time and hand it off to a third party. For every drop, he earned 200 pounds. He claimed ignorance, said he didn't know it was drug money. But on his phone, a photo, bricks of cash next to a spice-labeled box with a Dutch return address. There were dozens like him. Some registered shell companies. Some signed rental agreements with fake IDs. Some shuttled vehicles. Some stored product. Some kept silent. And this was just one city. The network spanned over 10. Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, London, Nottingham, all with front operations, drop points, and cutout logistics. It wasn't cartel style, it was textile, modular, agile, clean. The NCA began linking the fragments. Who rented what? Who wired funds? Who held warehouse keys? Who stood at the door? 18 people emerged from the fog, from Green himself to a 22-year-old in a van, from a silent director of a spice company to a man unloading onions that weren't onions at all. None of them held weapons. None of them needed to. The operation ran on secrecy and routine, but now the routine was mapped. And when it came time to move, the NCA already knew where every player would be, and when, and what they'd be carrying. It happened in the morning. No sirens, no helicopters, just a knock at the door. Operation Venetic had entered its final phase. Simultaneously across 20 locations in England, Scotland, and Wales, tactical units made their move. In Manchester, a man was arrested outside a rental warehouse holding 2 empty crates. In London, a director of a spice import company was found in a home with no evidence the company had ever shipped anything legitimate. In Leeds, a courier was pulled from a van with traces of white powder, torn packaging, and 90,000 pounds in cash. Paul Green was stopped in his own car. In one hand, a normal iPhone. In the other, a live, unlocked EncroChat device. His last message read, SC6 received. North route after 2 a.m. Paper check by 9. It wasn't just incriminating, it was irrefutable. Seizures followed. Over 1.5 tons of drugs, dozens of encrypted phones, ledgers, fake invoices, keys to warehouses already breached. At one site, CCTV captured a man unloading onions the day before the raid. The crates made no sound. The contents didn't bounce. Inside, shrink-wrapped bricks of cocaine layered beneath dummy vegetables. Interrogations began. Some cooperated, some didn't. But EncroChat spoke for them all. Every on schedule, every batch delivered, every run clean was now evidence. Nothing could be denied. The court process took nearly 3 years. 2 waves of prosecutions. First, the core coordinators. Second, the operational layer. Manchester Crown Court. High security courtroom. Endless exhibits. Chat logs, wire transfers, surveillance, phone extractions. Defense lawyers tried to soften the scope, but the numbers didn't lie. The NCA estimated the group moved at least 7 billion pounds in narcotics, the largest drug trafficking prosecution in UK history, and likely the largest in Europe in a decade. The sentences were steep. Paul Green, 32 years. 2 logistics coordinators, 25 and 28 years. 3 drivers in between 10 and 14 years. Financial operators, 7 to 12 years. Shell company directors, 5 to 10 years. 18 total convictions. Collectively, over 300 years in prison. The judge called it a silent war on the fabric of the nation. And that's what it was. No gunfire, no headlines, just billions in poison, quietly rolled in behind paperwork and pallets, until one network broke and took the rest of the system with it. Numbers don't lie. 1.5 tons of drugs seized, and that was only what was caught. Authorities estimate the network trafficked at least 7 billion pounds in heroin, cocaine, and cannabis. And most of it ended up on UK streets. Every brick of cocaine routed through that logistics system became someone's high. In a club, a house party, a back alley. Every kilo of heroin, a needle, a vein, a possible overdose. Each million the group earned left behind tens of thousands of broken lives. According to NHS data, drug-related psychosis cases rose by 22% in 2022. In Northern England, 34%. In London, 40%. Emergency services responded daily to overdoses, many involving teens. Crime among addicts spiked. Communities hit hardest by the supplies saw ripple effects. Muggings, assaults, home invasions. In its official report, the NCA called Operation Venetic a landmark success. But they were quick to add, for every network we dismantle, 3 try to replace it. The UK Home Secretary commented publicly, "This group was not a gang. They were an industrial supplier. What they built wasn't just criminal, it was scalable." For police and intelligence units, narcotics have evolved beyond street crime. They're treated as a national security threat. Because when logistics are optimized, addiction is delivered like a product. When infrastructure holds, people fall. And when the network remains untouched, it thrives in silence. Every successful shipment meant another dose in someone's body. Every truckload, a future death. And no one in the network saw it. They weren't on the street. They didn't need to be. But the consequences they triggered, they reached every corner of the country. Paul Green got 32 years. 17 others were handed down hundreds more. The operation dismantled. The business collapsed. But the question remains, was that the whole network? During the investigation, NCA officials hinted at deeper connections. To the Netherlands, Eastern Europe. possibly to Albanian and Mexican cartels. Some EncroChat handles never matched to names. Some devices stayed active after the arrests. And while the trucks may have stopped, the routes are still out there. Official reports say the group has been taken down, but the infrastructure might still be alive. That's the real fear, not those behind bars, but those who watched and learned. The ones who saw how it worked, who studied the blueprint, who now know how to change it. They saw how easy it was to bypass checks, to hide 80 kilos in garlic, to run an empire without drawing attention. They saw the system. Now they know how to improve it. And that means only one thing. The next truck is already being planned. The next big fella is already connected. The only question is, will anyone see him before he rolls in?